Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, everyone. We're tuning in from all over the world here. We've got a lot of registrants from all over the place. So if you're in, if it's like late for you or if it's early, early morning, we'd love to hear you guys. Woo! Emily Heffer coming through.
Hi, Emily.
Thanks, Emily, for being so lively. I know it's early for you too. Yeah, tell us where you're coming from. We love hearing it. This is truly a worldwide webinar. Carmen, this is
Hmm?
like we have people coming from all over NYC, South Carolina, Maryland, Chicago. Oh my gosh. This
Whoa,
is
whoa, whoa. So nice to see. Yeah, I was saying it right here. Well, right now in Toronto, it's like apocalyptic ice storm.
yeah.
So I hope that it's nicer where you are.
I hope it is. I mean, we got that false sense of spring yesterday, which was really nice,
Mhm.
but that was fake spring in Canada. So if you're Canada, you
I lived
understand.
it away.
Fake
Yeah.
spring, and then we get fake summer, happens all throughout the year. I'm so excited y'all are here today. Y'all, I'm bringing in my Texas accent. We're so excited you're joining us today. It's going to be a fun conversation. We have an exclusive conversation with Rachel Karten. I'll let Carmen kind of do the intros a little bit later, but we obviously want to do a few housekeeping things as people are joining us. If you're here and you've registered for the webinar, this will be sent to your inboxes tomorrow morning. So don't worry about that. If you miss part of the conversation or you want to rewatch it, this will be sent to your inboxes, and that's exciting. And we'll be posting some content throughout the week from this webinar as well. And obviously, we're doing a giveaway. So if you have any questions, we had a lot of questions coming in. Let me just preface this by saying we had over 100 or so questions come in from you as you were registering for this. So we're going to get to that in the conversation. But if you have any like urgent or live questions now, we're going to try to get to one or two of them at the end of the call. And if you do ask a question, you will be entered into a giveaway, which is very fun to win either a t-shirt or a gift card, depending on where you're located. So we'd love to have your questions come in. And if not, if we don't get to them now, we have a post-webinar discussion happening in our Slack community, where Carmen, me, and some of the other marketers will be active there to answer any of your questions. So if you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't get to my question, do not fret, do not fear. We will be in our Slack a little later. I'll drop the link in this chat so you can join our Slack community because it's thriving. I love it there. People are always asking questions about social, and it's so fun. All right. Before I get into anything else, I have a little shameless plug here that I'm doing before we get into the fun conversation. I'm going to do this little screen share for y'all. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about Slate. We work here. Slate puts on this webinar every month. And you might be like, I joined the social club. That's a mouthful. I join the social club every month, but I don't know what Slate is. So I'm going to do like just a brief little intro. Okay. So here we go. Um, Oops, I started at the wrong slide. But anyways, a few years ago, Slate was built out of the need. Eric and Michael are the founders of the company, and they really are social media professionals who realized they were juggling multiple tools, okay? Fragmented work processes. They were creating on multiple different platforms, and they were like, okay, we need a better place to do this, right? We need a better place to create content that isn't so fragmented. So Slate was built as the complete creation platform for social media teams. Um, there we go, a little switch. So how does it work? It's built for this. First, it's honestly built for the speed of social. It's a really, really easy to use mobile and web app. So wherever you're comfortable creating, whether it's on mobile or web, we've created Slate for you. So if you're on the field, on the court, at a conference, or in the comfort of your own home creating content, you can create on mobile or web in your brand voice and font. Second, it's a lightweight video editor. You don't need to know the extensive knowledge that you would have to know for Premiere. We made it easy for social teams to use. We're having to learn so much on a day-to-day basis. AI, copywriting, da da da. And we just wanted a place where it was easy to create content, video, and static images. So if you're creating carousels or video or templates, whatever it is, you can do it in Slate. Third, we're an AI long to short form clipper. I have to edit webinars every month. I don't know if any of you have to edit webinars or podcasts or even conferences. I love being there live, but watching it back, it's not my cup of tea. So I don't want to do that all the time. So we've created a long to short form clipper where it surfaces the best social moments for you. The best part is it's still in your control as a human to add the B-roll, add the colors, add the fonts, add the like sound effects. We wanted AI to basically do the hard part for you. And I love this. I use it every month to make our webinars into social ready clips. And I would actually throw my laptop across the room if I didn't have this. Next, it's completely your brand. It's built from your brand. So everything you could ever need, your fonts, your logos, your colors, your templates, your assets, everything is loaded into the brand hub and everything is powered by your brand hub. So this is not a lightweight brand kit, but everything is there for you to use and you can access it in your mobile or web creation tool. So everything you could ever need, especially if you're a brand team that's really precious about what your brand looks like. We want to make sure that everything is consistent across every platform you're posting on. And finally, team collaboration. We're building a collaboration suite for social media teams. So no more having to download a file, send it over Slack, get it back and forth, and finally you're on version 0.789 1000 version on your desktop and your desktop is filled with files. We want to make a place where one person can start a project and somebody else can finish it. And that is coming later this year. But for now, we have approvals built into the platform. So, gonna end it there with my little shameless plug. Stop sharing. I'm gonna do that. And if you want to learn more, we would love to, talk to you. I'm gonna launch this little poll over here. So if you are interested in learning more about Slate, we'd love to chat with you. Our team will be in touch in the next couple of days or the next week, and we'll email you. And we'd love to really talk with you about how to make your social team process a little bit easier. So yeah, launching this poll before we get into it. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. We're very excited for this conversation. Thanks for bearing with me as I talk a little bit about Slate. Carmen, I'm going to hand it over to you, kick it off. We're so excited for this convo, and we will talk to you all I'll be back on at the very end of the conversation.
Okay. Rachel, I'll welcome you on now too. Hi. So
Hi,
good to see you again. Welcome to the Social Club. It's
thank
really nice to have you
you.
aboard.
Happy to be
And what a
here.
treat to get a whole hour to talk shop. We have conversations every month with leaders and experts in the social media space to learn more from each other and then, broadcast those learnings out into a few more algorithms. I want to make really good use of our time. So we're going to do the quickest of intros, you and me, and then launch into our interview. We'll get to questions at the end. Most of them were submitted ahead of time. Like Christina said, if you have some, drop them in the question box. So I'm Carmen. I lead social and content strategy here at Slate. I also make kind of critical leaning content about social media over on TikTok and LinkedIn. So if you have egregious screen time, you might recognize me from some of those apps. Rachel, tell us about you.
I am Rachel Karten. I write a newsletter called Link in Bio, all about working in social media. And I also consult with brands on their social strategies. And I'm a fan of Carmen's and I'm excited to chat with you finally. I feel like it's like when I watch your videos, I'm like, ugh, she knows what she's talking about. And I'm excited to, to
Well,
bring it IRL.
I'm glad that we get to finally sit down and in front of hundreds of people have a conversation. So we decided to frame this conversation as like a vibe check or a check-in with each other, but also anyone who works in social media about where we're at right now. And I think even though social media can distort, it can amplify topics, it's often a pulse check on what's happening just in broader society. And I think people who use social media, both personally and professionally, are feeling pretty exhausted. We just came out of a year where generative AI officially flooded our feeds. We're questioning the validity of everything that we see online. Currently, tech giants like Meta and YouTube are in a landmark court case to defend accusations that they purposefully built addictive platforms. And then we just experienced a US sale of TikTok, which brought about a ton of instability to the platform a year after the last bit of instability on TikTok. So it's a lot to contend with. You, Rachel, talk to all sorts of social pros every week, and I want to learn more about what you're hearing, what you're picking up on. In short, are we okay?
No,
Yeah.
we're not. I think working in social media is just as much of like being aware of all of the bad side of it and also trying to find um I hate to use this word, but like optimism in it. Like it's very hard to create content from like a very like, ugh, this place sucks
Yeah.
headspace. And so, I think that we're not okay, but also I have to sometimes separate like Rachel as like a critic of social media and Rachel as a this is my job to create content and to be on these platforms. And so, and also Rachel as a newsletter writer who maybe can like call out these things and try and get in front of these platforms of like, hey, this isn't cool, or why are you doing this type of way. So there's a lot of hats to wear, and I think a lot social managers know that wearing hats is kind of part of the job. So I think that I always am like, I stay up to date on what's going on. I understand frustrations people have with social media, but I also try and find the good in social media because I think that's the only place you can, when you work in social media, like create from. And so I think about, I don't know, I just wrote about a fan editor from Heated Rivalry who got hired by
Yeah.
HBO. That's an amazing story that like only social media can produce. And this was this woman's dream, and she started posting and like got a job at HBO. Like, how cool is that? And so I, balance that news and reading the New York Times and understanding what's going on with the like optimistic stories so that I can create from a place of how do I make the internet a better place? And I think that's why in my newsletter, I'm maybe slightly critical of generative AI because not only do I not think it's a good strategy, but I also just don't think it's good for like the ecosystem that we all work within of the internet. And so it's sort of balancing all of those things. What
Yeah.
about, how do you feel? How are you
I
feeling?
mean, I think the same is true. I mean, you can hold multiple things in your mind at the same time, and it doesn't mean that you're totally consumed by one of them. I mean, that we're talking about like what it means to exist as a human who, also coexists with a news cycle and all of that. So, yeah, and it's funny because like certainly I think a lot of my content is quite critical of social and platforms and algorithms, and at the same time, like I find TikTok to be a really hopeful place. Like I see a lot of content on TikTok where I'm like, God, I feel so much optimism about younger generations and about the way that they interact online. And like, certainly, like I can tell you, I can give you a big old long list of negative, terrible things too. But I feel that I'm actually surprised by how much content I come across, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, that like gives me like a little spark of something to make me feel like, okay, I feel inspired. I can keep on going. So agreed that we are exhausted, and at the same time, the internet and these platforms are not void of good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I also, go ahead.
sorry, no, you go.
Go. No, you go.
No. I was going to go on to the next question. You stay.
My next, and this is sort of related, but I also think like just as much like working in social media, like being aware of the headlines in the news is also not making sort of like quick reactions as well, because I think it's easy to be like, everyone's going to this platform. I think we just saw it with TikTok. And also knowing like you're the expert in the room in many of these meetings at your company. And so when your boss is like, everyone's going to Red Note or whatever it might be, like up, I forget the name of, I already
Yeah.
forget the name of it.
We talked about
Um,
it.
like I think that it's on, we can be the authority and say, hey, I understand that this is happening. Let's sit back and wait. We don't need to come up with a strategy for this platform because I do think this news cycle also creates a lot of like, where are we all going next? And like realistically, it's not anywhere yet.
Nowhere.
So it's also like you can be the person in the room to say, it's on my mind. I've held our account just to say that you did something, but also please like, I think it's tough to like it's I can see why you would want to scramble to like create a new strategy. And I think that needs to like we need to take a collective deep breath on that piece of it, I think.
Totally. And I mean, I think something I do at work a lot is I'll be like, hey, can we level set? Because like maybe I'm just stuck in some kind of echo chamber, And I think that does happen where I am seeing too much content about one thing, probably because I clicked on it. And then I start to feel like, the narrative is building and I'm like, holy shit, and then I go to drop my kids off at school and I'm like, not one of these people is worried about this thing that I feel
Totally.
like is like sky is falling level, 11. So uh yeah, I think there's also like a false sense of urgency that social creates. And if you take a step back, you can kind of get a bit of clarity from that urgency.
Yeah.
Um, so on the topic of exhaustion, one of the most omnipresent trends as of late has been this analog slash digital detox slash unplugging movement. Everyone is breaking their phones or turning to Opal. And I have sort of two questions about this. Number one, will Rachel Karten ever retreat to an off-grid organic goat farm? Important. Number two, are we really getting off our phones? Like, why is this such an intoxicating fantasy right now?
I would love to move to a
Yeah.
farm, but unfortunately, I need to do a lot of scrolling for my job.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, the fantasy of logging off, I feel like has been like ascending for a while. Like, I think that with these algorithms that have gotten more and more addictive, like you feel like you have less sort of choice, I would say, in your scrolling, and it's like an hour later, you're, fully, um, in it. And I heard this term, I think it was on _Samir for the first time, that was like regrettable minutes, and just like how just because like time spent might be going up, like those regrettable minutes of you scrolling might feel more and more like intense. And I definitely feel that way. Like I've just like gotten off of a scroll being like, I got nothing from that. Like that was just me mindlessly doing something, and I could have been doing something way more productive. And so those regrettable minutes feel like very loud right now. So I can see why people are wanting to log off. And so I think, again, like with those sort of like quick reactions, like I don't think it's like change every strategy that you have. Like social media doesn't matter because people are leaving. Like there's still a lot of people on social media. But I think, I'm thinking about, first of all, the type of content that performs in this trend is like, I don't know, as you did you call it performative offline? Like I feel like like I've heard sort of just this
Caitlin
idea of
Dees,
like,
yeah, she's a writer who she
yes,
wrote for Essence like an article about bricking, and
yes, yes.
she called it aspirationally offline.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like I've noticed like brand posts that, sort of have that element are performing well right now. And so like that's sort of my immediate like, oh, as a social strategist, how am I thinking about this trend? Like as an example that I called out yesterday, KitchenAid just rolled out their new mixer color. And so they did like a more sort of digital, how you'd imagine like a brand would like announce a new color, like a little asset, and that got like 40K likes. And then they actually went to a store, hung up a curtain, gathered a bunch of people, pulled the curtain, unveiled the new color. Everyone's clapping, freaking out, and that has, I think, like 2.5 million views. And like, you know, that's sort of the offline, like, look at these people gathered just to see the sort of like that's what's going on in the back of the viewer's mind. And so that's where my mind goes with the offline thing. But I don't think it's like, you know, social strategy is dead because everyone's moving offline. And I'm also just curious how many people are actually doing that versus sort of like,
I mean, I feel like, so it started, let's say, in the tail end of last year, where it was like, whoa, analog's going to be big. I started to see it and I was like, oh, I bet we're going to be so tired of that word by like
yeah,
January. And so it was like, it was in every trend prediction. It was something I talked about. Some of my most viral videos that I've ever made have been about analog. And I know it's just because this topic is trending right now. But it's funny because I feel in a way like I'm not going to like blame finger or point fingers and say it was the people making the content or the people predicting it or the people consuming it, but it's like the prediction was, okay, analog's going to be big, and what this means is people are going to get offline. And I'm like, yeah, analog is big. I don't think it means people are getting offline. Analog
yeah.
is just a form of content, and that form of content depicts offline activities, or
Mhm.
it depicts people interacting with other people. And it's almost like analog is just a flavor of content that we like to consume online. And maybe it makes us feel inspired to, I don't know, take up some kind of a hobby or something. And if so, great. Like I think that's a nice kind of byproduct of feeling inspired by content. But if it's like, hey, I like to watch analog content, and somebody's like, well, you're watching analog content, but you're on your phone. That's so ironic. It's like, I don't know. If I went to a museum and I looked at some art and I didn't make art, am I being a hypocrite? Like, I just think
Mhm.
that this idea that analog as a trending theme means a mass exodus from our online lives, I'm like, that doesn't track for me. So yeah, I think I don't quite feel like those two things are correlated as much as like maybe the people online or the gurus would have us believe. And I also think that the reason analog is trending is it's like a symptom of this exhaustion. It's a symptom of like your regrettable minutes, scenario where you're thinking, God, I'm so annoyed with the way that I like just used up this time. And so maybe if I devoted myself fully to some sort of offline activity, I wouldn't feel this way. But I don't know, in terms of like, will it forecast changes in our behavior on a societal level? I highly doubt it. So, like, to your point about should we revise, or should people like revise their social media strategies? It's like, yeah, do the moment like KitchenAid did. That's an excellent way to think about like, being in the real world. But I'm not like, I'm 0% afraid that people will be on off their phones. So
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, there's not like, and I hope that people get off their phones a little bit
yeah,
more.
yeah,
Like, I don't care. Like, the audience is big enough as is. Like, everyone should get offline more. I agree. Like, so
yeah,
I don't think viewing it as like we need to change our strategies, or like a CMO being like, this analog trend is everywhere. Like, what are we doing about it on social media? Like, I could see that conversation happening, and I think that would be stupid.
yeah, yeah, totally. Also, I don't know why there's two of me now.
I know.
There's Carmen and there's Carmen, but it's just one of me. But I'm not a Zoom master, so I'm just gonna ignore it. But oh, I'm gone. Okay. So okay, so moving on, one of the most, let's say, contentious topics among social media pros right now, but especially on LinkedIn, where I spend too much time, is that you need to build a personal brand on at least one platform if you want to prove your worth, or like if you want to prove that you have the chops to make social content. And of course, the irony there is that nobody deserves to log off at the end of their workday more than people who work in social media and who have been like, plugged into these algorithms. So I want to know your take here, because it's complicated, and there are obvious benefits to building an online presence.
I mean, I feel like I have the same answer for this, especially like when I talk to social managers who ask if they need a personal brand, or even like small businesses when they ask if they need social media in general. I always just say, like, it's a lever that you can pull, and I would never require it from anyone because it's not fun for some people, and it's not fun for me sometimes either. Like, I don't think that there needs to be these like thought leader, like, you have to be on social media. If you're not, you're missing out. Like, it's a lever you can pull. I think that on the hiring end, I would encourage social directors or CMOs or whoever's hiring for these positions to not um, require that or judge a candidate based off of their personal presence. I think that that is not fair. And there's some amazing social managers who I've interviewed who have no personal presence. And I actually think that's kind of cool too. They're doing the work and their portfolio speaks for itself. And like, that's what I care about. So I think on the flip side, it's a lever you can pull on those who do. I can't deny that there's some benefit to it, right? Of like in the interview process, or, oh, I've seen this person on LinkedIn. Like, we should see if they are interested in this role that we're hiring for. Like, you can become more top of mind.
Yeah.
Um, but I would never say like it's a requirement. You have to do this. I think that is just not fair. And I think it's unfortunate when I hear, oh, like they're applying for this role, but their personal social is like really bad. It's like, oh, that's not their job.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's obviously a different muscle to translate, some brand's narrative into social content than it is to make your life interesting on social media. Like, those are two very separate things. I think like for myself, I feel like pretty mixed about it, because, halfway through last year, I was like, maybe if I post on TikTok, I'll understand the platform a little bit more and I'll get better insights. And like, yeah, I do feel like I learn something every time I post. So it's been great in that sense. And I think that I feel more comfortable in the work that I do now with TikTok because of that experience. At the same time, it's also like made me way more addicted to the platform. And I get a fair amount of like hate comments and whatever, and a lot of like weird sugar daddy stuff in the DMs, which is just like I'm forever trying to be like, what is going on here? And I'm not their target demographic. Like, I can assure you, I'm not what a sugar daddy wants. So yeah, so there are aspects of it that I'm just like, God, this is terrible, and if this is the expectation, I feel bad for us. But then I also think when I see someone who is in a high seniority social role and they have zero online presence, I think, man, what a boss. Like I respect that so much too. So I think like, and I've seen it discussed in your Discord where people are saying like, I'm too busy to like, it's a sign that I have so much work on my plate that I can't make a you know, a personal account and have it thrive. And I think there's a lot to that too. You know, like the content that I create for my personal accounts is at night and in the morning before work, and not everyone wants to usurp all of their leisure hours doing that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that in the LinkedIn world, there's a bit of a bubble where people believe like it's a must. And I think outside of LinkedIn, I don't really feel that is the reality. And so once again, maybe the point here is that in social, you can get in these bubbles or these echo chambers where one thing feels really paramount. And in the real world, that's not the case. Um, but yeah, I think my goal maybe is that one day I won't have to have personal accounts, and this is just me paying my dues or something like that. Um,
Keep making content.
yeah.
You're good at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a funny boot camp of sorts, but so something you and I were talking about that we agree on is that sometimes the advice about how to be strategic on social or how to make great social content is not really realistic or applicable. Like we can kind of, you know, whether I'm writing a LinkedIn post or maybe in your newsletter, there's sort of like advice level strategy, and then there's, you know, pragmatic strategy that happens on the ground, and sometimes they're quite different. And you know, you and I were talking about episodic content, like in theory, I know it's good to make episodic content. In practice, it's been kind of difficult because I'll make content, it starts to trend, and then suddenly I don't want to make more episodes because I feel like I'm just like, you know, kind of pressing the trend button a little bit too hard or something. So I was thinking, like, what is something that both of us could say, or like, what's a point both of us could say that is like a realistic tactic or tip that we would advise people that doesn't feel like idealism, that feels like pragmatic, that, you know, would help people's content perform, a brand's social uh, content perform right now.
Wait, I built mine off of yours, so can you say yours first?
Yeah. For sure, for sure. So I think, I mean, like, this is honestly taking a page from your book. You've talked about proof of humanity before, and it's something I've really run with in all the strategies that I build. So for me, it's proof of humanity. And I think that this is like obviously tricky in that it means maybe you have to show your team more, you have to show faces more, you have to like kind of peel back the curtain on what's happening. And that means less veneer and less polish. So to some teams, I understand why that's scary. And yet, I think that it means that like fallibility is a win, and showing some of your like failures or like the not quite hitting it out of the park, you know, that becomes a win. And I feel like for us at Slate, for me and my personal content, and for anything that I notice online and I'm like, ooh, well played, it's like this, it comes down to this proof of humanity.
Okay, so mine, building off of yours, thank you for going first. Um, okay, this is a concept that I've been noodling on for the newsletter that I haven't quite like got yet. So if I sound bad, that's
Here, I
why.
want half page.
Um,
Let's hear it.
so mine was proof of effort and just sort of like in this environment on social media right now, you have consumers that never been more aware of like how marketing works, I feel like. I've read this before, but it's like, you know, on a brand post that's good, it's like, ooh, this marketing is amazing. And it's like not coming from a marketer. That's not on LinkedIn, that's on Instagram, which like is interesting. So people are complimenting brands on their marketing. And then at the same time, these feeds are filled with sort of like generative AI, things that feel very low effort, let's say. And so I think brands that are sort of showing that proof of effort are doing quite well right now. And so I think about not just effort and like you need to try harder with your content, like quite literally like leading with the effort that you put into something. And so I think about like 𝐂𝐚𝐭, who's an amazing creator, did the like kids with Crocs thing, which was like he put Crocs on statues in New York City. And the videos would start with like, I put Crocs on this statue and I 3D printed and then I did like covered it in honey, like did like all these like little
Yeah.
tasks and it like led with all that effort. And I think that people online find that very impressive when like so much of what they see is like either just like a quick face to camera or like this like sort of like
Mm-hmm.
the most casual post. And so I'm curious about And then, sorry, on the other side, there's like examples of like Martha Graham, which is like a dance studio, like just like setting up a camera and showing like rehearsal. And that's like effort in the sense that like these people are like the highest
Yeah,
talent you can imagine, like, and they're just, you're seeing them practice. And so I think that people want to see effort from a creative standpoint or from a hook standpoint of like, we did all these things to get here, which is
yeah,
sort of like proof of humanity in some ways as well, where you're showing like the people, like, hey, we're actually like doing all of this work.
yeah,
Um, and I think that people expect brands to sort of like delight them and try harder than the average creator.
yeah.
And so I'm curious about how effort sort of like uh dances its way into brand content, I would say, is like something I'm interested in.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like, let's say when TikTok really like blew up for most people, which is like maybe 2020, and then for years after that, it felt like the things that would go viral, not that that's necessarily the goal, but it felt like the things that would go viral would be so trivial, so arbitrary that you're like, what? Like you'd almost like not understand how like a, you know, a 6 second video could like do those sorts of numbers. And I think that it, like, definitely from a professional standpoint, I found it frustrating because I'm like, how in the hell are we supposed to try to make videos like that where like some like offhand thing happens? And I personally love the idea of it being more of like a meritocracy. Like if you show that you are trying and if you show that there is a lot that goes into it, it could be more successful. And I mean, certainly I find in my content, like the things that are scripted and edited and all of that, like that's what performs, not the like off the cuff. And I actually saw a video maybe last night. I forget the guy's name, I saved it, but um he was talking about how this style of content, which is, let's say, like yapping to camera, looks very casual, but there's actually a lot that goes into it,
I
you know.
saw
And
that too.
the
I saw
people
that
who
too.
are, did you see this too? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
I
we're
don't
being
know
served the
where.
same thing. Yeah, but it's funny because it's not even so much that it made me rethink yapping content. It's more that I thought his video was so compelling that he was able to say, like, actually, there's a lot of things that are happening here that you're not thinking about because they're making it look effortless. And I feel the same way with like, there's authors I really like who get like a lot of criticism sometimes. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he was like, "Here's the thing: they make it look easy, and that's why it's easy to tear it down." And I think that like yeah, I feel that way about yapping content where, sure, it looks like somebody just sat in their car and talked for a few minutes and then like, how did this get like 3 million views? And it's like, but that wasn't what it was. You know, this person knows exactly how to craft a verbal hook. This person knows exactly how to craft like a visual hook. And they put all of these things together and they made it timely and they, you know, didn't say too much and, you know, whatever. And I think that yeah, the people are smarter, consumers and audiences and the people who are watching social content, they're not dum dums, you know, and they have a firmer grasp on marketing, and they also have screen time that's through the roof. So it's like they've seen good, bad, in between content. And I just think that collectively our, I don't know if I'd call it taste, but maybe discernment is way higher. You know, in 2020, it was way easier to impress an audience. Right now, people are like, no, that's pedestrian, you know, like show me something good. So yeah, I mean, I think that proof of humanity, proof of effort, these are all like intertwined um, in what people are seeking.
I also just think, the sort of effort that you put into content can be a reflection of your brand itself and the effort you put into other things, like your product. And so I think a lot of people I see in the comments were talking about the Olympics, and I had the same reaction when I saw that the Olympics was using like generative AI to like celebrate the winners. And that bothered me, and maybe because I am a marketer, but I think it bothered a lot of people because you're celebrating people who are at like the top of their game. And then the art you're using is like derivative of whatever is online. And so I think like there's a reflection that can happen. And so I think like, I mean, I always talk about Craig Hill, they're like my North Star brand, but
Yeah.
like they are nerds about their design process when they're making their products, and then they translate that into video content that nerds out on their design process. And it, like, for me as a consumer, I'm like, whoa, that's so cool that they think so hard about every single detail. but it's entertaining and it makes me want to buy their product. I'm like, can you imagine a better like reflection of what you'd want your social media to do for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an interesting point because like I feel like we have a, a question, an audience question down the line about like talking to leadership, but it's like, yeah, if we want to be perceived as a company that cares about, let's say, delivering a service or a product, we have to show that in every facet. And external comms, if we want to call social media that in the sort of broken down terms, is that as well, right? If the quality of the social content is terrible, I often think like, oh, I don't know, like what's going on with this company that they can't even get like their act together to have one social media person, publish
Hmm.
some good content. So, yeah, these are really interesting points. I feel like you had a question that came up in the link in bio Discord. Do you want to queue up that one about building a strategy?
Yes, I feel like in the Discord we were talking about how do you build a social media strategy? And then it sort of sent me down a spiral of like, what even is a social strategy anymore? Pillars, like what, like do those matter? And so I don't know. And so
Yeah.
I was like, maybe we can, I was like, maybe Carmen and I can jam on it for a little and come back with a good answer. But I mean, I know you started this role recently. Have you had to put together like a social strategy deck or document yet?
Yeah, it's funny because, Eric is like he's good about saying like oftentimes internal decks are unnecessary. And so I really appreciate that about him. I have made a few internal decks, but yeah, like the first thought I had when you were talking about strategy and like how does one build a strategy was like, A, that's really relatable that there isn't one way to build a strategy. And I think sometimes maybe people who are newer to social media, they believe like, oh shit, is there some perfect strategy workflow that I just haven't uncovered and everyone else is using? And I'm like, no. Like I talk to a lot of people in social, you talk to a lot of people in social. I think like everyone is using different rubrics and frameworks and whatever to build their strategy. I think that this is, I mean, I don't know if this is obvious or not, but like the goals of each company I've worked at or consulted for have been really different. So I think that that's like step number one is don't assume that the brand, like let's say, wants to go viral or wants to grow their numbers on like of followers or something. Like people have pretty different goals. And I feel like that's like probably like foundation one that I would start with is like, what do you actually want to achieve from social media? Because certainly at the last company I worked at, it was different than what our goals are here at Slate. So in my mind, that's like step one. It's like you have to have some conversations with leadership or whoever is going to be like making these decisions about what you actually want to get out of social. And that's because social is like this, it's got so many different angles that you could be utilizing it for. So yeah, 1A, conversations about where you want to go.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, in terms of the consulting you do, I guess you probably start with these sorts of conversations too.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's been like new questions that I ask also of like something that I wrote about maybe like a year ago is like, are you like a fast or a slow brand on
Mhm.
social? And
Yeah.
just like something like that of like, are we going to be the first one to every trend? And like, that's what we're sort of, we're leaving the calendar open to be reactive, or are we going to be slow, not in the sense that we're slow to a trend, slow in the sense that actually our strategy is pretty agnostic to what's happening on the internet. Sure, maybe like, Taylor Swift gets engaged and we do something, but it's not like building a strategy
Hope that
around
never happens
like
again because that was like one of the worst days of my social media life.
um but I think that's an important question when you're thinking about your strategy because there's kind of nothing worse than somebody outside of social being like, are we gonna do this? Are we gonna this trend, are we gonna do this? And it's like stay out of it. And so when you decide if you're going to be a brand that is like reactive to trends or sort of agnostic to trends and sort of that speed is important to, I think about when building a strategy. But I feel like, yeah, when I think about the old strategy decks that I wrote in like 2014, 2015, it was like the pillars that ladder up to the columns that ladder up to the buckets. And it was like this
Yeah.
thing. And I felt like we used social to like tell every story about the brand. And it was like, we need to talk about our employees. We need to talk about this. And now I don't think I would build a strategy in that way. And it's like, and maybe, a platform is one story. And so for LinkedIn, it's the employee story, but for like Instagram, it's the X story. And so it's like, I think I would not probably do that anymore,
Yeah.
because I don't know how many stories platforms can like hold anymore.
This is sort of what I feel is that like I think that a lot of times when if I look at say like an existing strategy or a team that's like we don't really know what the strategy is, but can you take a look at this? Like I feel like there's a lot of like trying to do way too much on too many platforms, and it's like you say like how much can you achieve with each of these? Like what are you trying to do 7 things with Instagram? You probably can't do 7 things with Instagram. And I'll also look at content calendars and be like there's no way 2 people are going to get this amount of work done. Like this is aspirational, content.
Mhm.
So there's that I think about too is like probably I would try to achieve a lot less, and I would also think about how often you have to report because I think sometimes when you're on like a weekly reporting cycle, you do a lot of content for the reporting. You don't do it because that's what's best for the brand, and certainly like not going to throw my previous company under the bus, but there was a lot of like needing to hit KPIs, and that meant we were putting out content that had nothing to do with like furthering the brand's goals. So I think that there's like that should be baked into strategy is ultimately like having a frank conversation about like how do we measure success, because a lot of times I think that can get in the way of making like resonant content that people actually want to consume. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think it's funny to when I have conversations with other people who work in social, which I do like every week, I feel like it's funny to realize that there are very similar themes that come up for all of us, which is that it's very hard to prove ROI, that there aren't proper like attribution metrics that show like, oh, when you watch this social post, then you clicked on this thing and then you purchased that whatever. So it's like
Mhm.
everyone is fighting very similar battles, which is that you probably have to be a really good internal storyteller. And I think that maybe one of the points I would suggest people do more is just try to prove more correlation. Like you're probably never going to have the ability to say like this post caused that outcome, but I think that probably more social media people could be tracking correlation better and it would make their job easier. So like, in Q1, did we have overall more whatever the metric is that you wanted to move, whether it's like a CPG brand that sold more units of something or a tech company that booked more demos or something like that. And I think that probably, I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh, but I feel like I don't see a lot of people talking about correlation. And I think that's like probably your best tool in your toolbox as when it comes time to reporting. So
Yeah.
yeah.
When I've like talked to like I interviewed like the cheese shop in Beverly Hills, which um sort of has like a series where it's the customer ordering cheese from the cheesemonger and they just sort of like film it like stepped back. Like they tell me like social media has changed their business. Now, like, are they tracking the post to the cheese? No,
Yeah.
like, not at all. But they know that like that attention has led to new customers, but they're not like sitting down at a sheet, like trying to connect the dots. And so, I think that there's uh, a certain, yeah, like trust in like the correlation of like, okay, we can see that this is connecting to this, but not like this post led to like 20 outreaches for a demo. And it's like, that's good, but it's like, I don't know. If you get so stuck in those metrics, also I worry about like the type of content that would lead you to make if you're just sort of judging it based off of that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay. I'm mindful of time. I want to get to some questions. Um, I'm wondering if we should do an audience question, a live one first, and then get to some of ours. Maybe I'm going to do that. Hopefully, let's say Brianna Santiago, which Christina told me had a great question. Brianna, do you want to ask your question and come off mic for a sec? Sometimes there's a delay. I don't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, let me just hear my question. So a lot of B2C brands, I feel like it's easier for them to show proof of humanity and effort But how can B2B brands and companies give people that proof of effort without stepping out of those stricter brand guidelines?
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Great question. I mean, we Slate is a B2B brand, and I feel like a lot of the proof of humanity or proof of effort comes on LinkedIn, where like I think LinkedIn is quite amenable to you talking not so much about the campaign you launched, but like how you launched the campaign and how like what were the steps leading up to it? What were the things that maybe like didn't go according to plan, i.e., like the failures? So I I don't mean I have a very like B2B centric mindset. So I feel like Rachel will do a better job of talking about B2C, but um, I feel like it's actually like easier for B2B to show proof of humanity because LinkedIn is so open to that style of content. And also, maybe in the past, like SaaS companies or B2B corporations weren't necessarily known for putting their specific employees in the spotlight. Whereas now, if I feel like there's quite a hunger for that type of that style of content. What do you think, Rachel?
I agree. And I also think like, I feel like there's a lot of brands will tell their sort of like origin story once and then like use that as like, we've told it, we're good. But I'm like, I remember when I was looking at Poppy like very early on, like their founder told their origin story on TikTok like 20 times. It was like we went on Shark Tank telling that story, like through different hooks. And like I think that, I'd be curious if like Eric like was on, TikTok talking about why he started Slate. It's a very like compelling story for social managers. And so like I think that there's a lot of ways to find a way in for B2B. I also just think like I'm interested in B2B companies that are kind of doing B2C activities right now. I think about like a Ramp, Air, and sort of getting wacky with what a B2B company is allowed to do. And so I actually think that sort of um, that like feeling of I've never seen a B2B company do proof of effort is actually a great prompt because it means that there's not a lot of content like that, right? And so that can be sort of a moment where like, hey, we're seeing this in the B2C space, like how could we bring that in B2B? And I think people would be intrigued by it. We're seeing like, content that takes place in an office, like doing quite well, like it becomes sort of a set. So is there a spoof on working at a B2B company? Like, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. So trying to reframe it is less of like it's harder for B2B and more like what's the opportunity for B2B to like enter that space.
Totally. And I feel like there's less competition, to be totally honest. So I
Yeah.
think it's easier to stand out with less. So I think like good time to be a B2B company. I'm going to do this one that was submitted beforehand. But the question is when it feels like every idea has already been done, how do you create unique content?
I mean, I'm gonna say a very like tactical answer, which is like I like to watch movies and yeah, like there's content that is, trending on social media, but there's lots of cues from old movies, just the like mechanics of storytelling that I think are very inspiring. As an example, I watched It's a Wonderful Life for the first time over Christmas, and their intro credits are like somebody wrote on paper and then they just like literally move the piece of paper out of frame to like say who's like in it. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool like hook or intro. Like maybe that's like brain rot of me to be like, I love that
Oh,
for real. Like watching it's like a classic movie, but I think watching movies and sort of understanding, how people's attention is captured and things offline helps me come up with ideas for
yeah.
online.
No, I think that's like totally on my line of thinking. My feeling when I read this question was I only feel that way, like every idea has been taken when I'm too deep in just paying attention to what my industry is doing
Yeah.
or like one platform. And then usually it's assigned to me like, whoa, 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 you've like scrolled too much, you know? And I think that like take it as a signal to take inspiration from other things. And it's not like I don't think the move is to say, okay, where's my inspiration? I'm on inspiration mode. You know, it's like I think it's more just like, okay, you've probably scrolled too much. And I don't mean that as like I'm not telling someone they've done something wrong. It's just like there's so many other places we can borrow things from, and like movies are obviously great because it's another art form that is shot on film. So there's a nice crossover there. But yeah, I feel like even just I used to work in the beer industry, and I remember we took a lot of inspiration from like cosmetics companies and like the way that they were doing product shoots. And we were like, oh, that would make a lot of sense, or that's a really cool way to show like four formats or four like flavors or something like that. And so I think that really when you're feeling like low on inspiration, it's time to look at other industries, other platforms, other like generations, all of that. And I feel like there's just like so much out there to take
Yeah.
from. Yeah. Okay, another one that was, I feel like we're doing okay for time. I'm gonna give Christina maybe like 5-ish minutes at the end to finish things up. But we got a lot of questions about interviewing, getting jobs, being new to the industry, that sort of thing. I was actually surprised by how much we got. And one of them was like, just bare bones, like, what are your tips for interviewing in social right now?
I feel like when I interview candidates, I'm more looking for like an interest and passion and an ability to, especially if they're early on in their career, like I want to hear what accounts you follow and I really want to hear why, like that you can express sort of like why you like following it.
Mhm.
Um, I'm less interested in like, do you know how to use Slate or do you know how to use like a tool and more interested in like how do you articulate what you love about working in social, what posts you thought were interesting. And there's no wrong answer in terms of like a brand or a post. It's more about can you talk to me about why it intrigued you or why you thought it worked. And so really kind of practicing that and having lots of sort of examples at the ready. And if you're early on in your career, it's not even about posts maybe that you've even worked on. That's like cool if you have that, but it's like, can you talk about a brand that you love following and why? And it can sort of like
Mhm.
really give me a great answer in
Yeah.
articulation. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a question I felt people botched a lot when I was in more of an interviewing phase of my career was that I would say, like, what are your sources of, like, how do you stay on top of things? What are your sources of inspiration? Like, what is your sort of like media diet almost? And I feel like people would always be like, oh, well, like my screen time is crazy, or like I'm chronically online. And I was always like, oh, that's not really the answer I'm looking for. Like, I want to see like more of a diverse range of inputs to create a diverse range of outputs rather than
Mhm.
somebody telling me like don't worry I'm always on TikTok. So I think like I'm looking for someone to be like, oh, like you're saying, like I follow this because I watch old movies because I find there's a lot of inspiration. I like get like, a subscription to this whatever like newsletter or something because they always have good ideas, and the way that they break down like current events is very prescient or something. It's like I'm looking for more of like a diverse range of inputs type of answer, and in the past wasn't always getting great responses. I'm going to queue up one more live question from Matt Smith, I believe. Matt, do you want to come off mute and ask us your question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Given the state of social media, what is one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self? Kind of thinking of folks who are just breaking into the industry where burnout is extremely common and longevity is rare.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hmm.
What is a piece of advice I would give my younger self? I mean, this is like going to sound really boring and motherly, but like probably I would like instate some boundaries a little earlier in my career. I mean, like these days I try pretty hard not to scroll in the morning. And I scroll a ton, so don't worry, I'm not like being self-righteous about this and saying I've like figured out some holier than thou method, but I find that it like kind of stops my thinking. And so if I scroll first thing, it's like the creativity just like boom comes to a halt. So it's just like something I've noticed over time that if I give myself a bit of like a buffer in the morning to like go on a walk, take my kids to school, have some like moments to really like parse out some ideas, then I'm like a much more productive, let's say, employee, but I'm also just like a happier person. So yeah, my answer is a bit cliche, but I would probably give myself boundaries earlier on.
Yeah, I feel like mine's similar. I think I have like rationalized my screen time like a lot and like told myself I have to be online for my job and I have to
Mm.
scroll and I need to and I think that like it's an issue now for me. And so I find myself picking up my phone. Like there's that phone pickup stat, like screw a screen time stat. The phone pickup stat is where you really see what's wrong with you. And so that is something that I think, and I continue to rationalize it, but it like affects my life. And so I would say maybe just like educating myself more around screen time and sort of the effects that it can have, and um, doing a better job of instead of rationalizing it, saying like, "Hey, you're done for the day." And so, yeah, it's more about that, I feel like, than anything. And yeah, I think just like fulfilling myself creatively outside of my phone and like doing that more earlier. But I think the problem is that I've gotten more addicted to my phone as time has gone on. So my younger self was probably like maybe had a better relationship with her
Yeah,
screen time than
actually,
I do now.
maybe your younger self needs to give advice to your older self.
Honestly. Honestly.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Well, I feel like that's probably it for time. I really appreciate the hour to go through all of this. Rachel, it was really nice to talk with you. And Christina's gonna wrap up a few housekeeping things. But yeah, just a heartfelt thanks for the time. And it was really great to hash out these like topical thoughts about social media with you.
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So good to have you, Rachel. And yeah, make sure to subscribe to the link in bio newsletter. Honestly, so good. I get so much of my inspiration from there. So thank you, Rachel. So good to have you. Okay, before we end off, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone. The chat was like exploding today. It was so lively. I loved it. It was so fun. A lot of you have joined our Slack community. Sorry about all the notifications for people who are already on there. I'm trying to figure out how to stop it, but I can't. But we'll figure it out. I do want to share one thing that is coming up shortly that I would like all of you to join if you're interested. We have a fun power hour happening, content hour, especially if you're like trying to figure out how content gets made. We have the Detroit Pistons kind of walking us through their publishing, they're posting 2,000 posts a month with only a five-person team, which is kind of like crazy. So it's shocking, and it's going to be a fun conversation to learn about how they do all that. So I'm very excited for that one. I am going to leave the QR code here, but I do have to stop sharing to get back into the chat to share the link. So I'm going to do that right now. So make sure to join us. You're going to learn about tactical tips of like how to create content quickly, especially how they're using Slate. But it doesn't just apply to sports social teams. It really applies to anyone who's creating content across brands, CPG, B2B, B2C, everything. So if you're there, we'd love to see you there. We're going to do our giveaway as well. Let me just quickly switch to the wheel of names. I have nobody else here to help me do the drum roll, but that's okay. I'm going to do it myself. Okay. With a nice little Pepto-Bismol ad. Look at us marketers being marketed to Pepto-Bismol. Okay, I'm gonna spin the wheel. Here we go. The winner of the gift card or t-shirt is Brianna. Okay, Brianna, find me on LinkedIn a little later, and then I will get your details so that we can give you the giveaway. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Join our Slack community. I have the link here. I know a lot of you are curious about that, so I'm going to post that link one more time. There you go for everybody. Oh, love you back. This is so fun. I love being here. So I'll see you on Slack. We're going to do some like kind of talking post-webinar. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that you all have that you want to ask and keep the discussion alive. So we'll see you in there. And until next time, until the Detroit Pistons one, we won't have a webinar for March, by the way. So that's a month off, but we'll be back in April for a fun one. So you'll be getting our email if you've signed up for this one. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day. Rest. Don't doom scroll so much. Touch some grass, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Woo.